Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I wanted to talk about some poetry of interest. Today's poem is all about coyotes and dogs. I am referring to Coyote Song by Marsha de la O. For those who don't know, Marsha de la O is a American writer, white American writer. They also teach at one of the California State Universities, I believe, and they publish their own book of poetry, or they publish like a journal of poetry, I think it is, called Askew. And I think they've been writing since the 90s, and they have a couple of publications and whatnot here and there. Not a lot of information available about them, but I think this poem is very interesting, so I wanted to talk about it today. I think there's also a video where Marsha de la O is also talking about this poem. I haven't seen it, but that'd be worth checking out too, since it's coming directly from the writer. And I do think I searched for this in October for some spooky poetry. I do think there's some spooky elements to this poem, especially the sort of haunting nature to it, but I'll discuss that more when I get to the analysis section. So without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we'll move on from there. Coyote Song. Inside the night, this hospital, asylum, this party for those undone by desire, forever unslaked, inside a house inside the night. I'm inside this house with 8 beams and moonlight, pulling on the past through skylights. This house of white noise, wind and dry heat, lonely house on a ridgeline, house of ordinary shame. My sister's house with corals and outbuildings around it, and beyond that, the dog patrolling, and beyond that, skirts and folds of the mountain rising in rumpled geologic scrolls in the range. At the center, beneath the moon's silence that nothing ever changes, muffled in blankets with fear beside me on my little bench of sleep, I can hear their voices. Could be 3 or 23, unhinged saints gabbling to their shadows, or panty sniffers, drug trippers, in all flavors past vanilla. Could be Burnham Wood on the move, the shriek of its roots thirsty and airbrushed, or a pack of lunatics crooning norteño songs. What is certain is Advent. They're coming down, coming towards the heart beneath the feathers, coming for what can't be protected on a beam of dread, riding that ray. I'm listening, my eyes snapped open inside darkness, other people in other rooms who know how to sleep through a night like this night, thrown against the roundness of the world which is desire. The old bitch guards the night on the ranch, half shepherd, half other. This is her watch. She gallops the perimeter, anxious to sound like more than one dog, though she's going arthritic and her paws strike the ground hard. Now they quiet, penitents, lunatics, marauders, and ragpickers, quiet. Only one left beneath, and the moon is his hieroglyph, one creature padding down the mountain, coming closer. Coyote knows a good joke. He only wants to let her in on it. He can't stop laughing, can't stop crying, can't stop licking the crevices clean, licking safety and duty until they're empty. I hear the dog listening, ears lifted. Coyote's tongue slides into night air, pressing narcotic vowels through wonder, through longing and wonder awaken. She's close to that edge, that border in the night, where one thing becomes another, and even an old dog who's worked a ranch 11 years feels the urge to let loose, blow this little settlement, go wild. Clouds loose and blue in the arms of the moon slant light on this mountain raking us. The dog and I, we feel the pull. Imagine a woman trying to come between Coyote and the female he's after when she knows what is dark and offers itself and vanishes has come for her at last. The body wants what it can't have, to follow the path of thirst through the rent in the wire beyond the corral. The dog doesn't move, but who knows better than she the small outpost death has set up in her. Maybe she's all desire now to slip under the moon and chase down that lure. Coyote wheedles and croons another minute or two, then lopes off, calling over his shoulder in a language even I can understand. The right names for things not kept in heaven. So that was Coyote's song. In terms of analysis, there is a fair bit worth talking about with this poem. In terms of narrative, it seems to be the narrator asleep in bed with multiple people in the house, sort of listening as a coyote comes down the mountain and is in search of either sex or in search of food. Because they live on a ranch. It's searching for something, and there's a dog outside, a shepherd that's also sort of guarding the house as dogs do, and the dog is trying to sound very tough, but it's an older dog. It's also a female dog, which might be drawing in the coyote, and there's a tense moment of whether that dog is going to be able to take care of what it needs to do. Ultimately, the coyote leaves, so there's a moment of safety for that dog. But I think the fear of what might happen still remains, maybe with the dog, but also with the human who is living with this dog. And so it's a pretty interesting sort of poem in terms of narrative. There's a lot going on. But I think one thing that Marsha de la O does really great in this poem is the use of atmosphere, sort of describing a sort of like a mysterious moonlit night. And that you see that in the first verse where it says, inside the night, this hospital, asylum, this party for those undone by desire, forever unslaked inside a house inside the night. I'm inside this house with 8 beams and moonlight pulling on past through skylights. This house of white noise, wind, and dry heat. So you get a feel for the sort of atmosphere there, where the moon's coming in through skylight and it's hot, but you can hear nothing but random noises for one, but you can sort of hear what's going on outside. You can hear your dog sort of marching around, and you can hear a coyote coming closer and closer, wondering what's going to happen. Another verse, the narrator says, what is certain is Advent. They're coming down, coming towards the heart beneath the feathers, coming for what can't be protected. On a beam of dread riding that ray, which is a pretty intense section of the poem. Like, they're coming down. This is Advent. This is the beginning. This is a moment of ultimate truth. What's going to happen? And there's a beam of dread. These coyotes are coming down. These coyotes are not to be trifled with. You really get a feel for like the scary nature of it, and it's not like the dog is really that healthy, because later in the poem you see the narrator say, the old bitch guards this night on the ranch, half shepherd, half other. This is her watch. She gallops the perimeter, anxious to sound like more than one dog, though she's going arthritics and her paws strike the hard ground. And that's really good at sort of getting at the anxiety of the moment. It's just one dog versus what sounds like many coyotes. The odds aren't necessarily in the dog's favor. And what's more is the coyote seeks to reproduce, which probably wouldn't be good for the dog. It wants to have sex, so it's sort of like a male on female sort of moment of violence. I think the narrator is projecting a sense of anthropomorphism, something that really happens with human males and females, the sort of subjugation there, which I get a sense is somewhere layered in this poem. But luckily there's a sense of hope at the end where the narrator notes the coyote goes away, but there's still the threat of the coyote at a later date. It's a really interesting final verse where the narrator says, coyote wheedles and croons another minute or two, then lopes off, calling over his shoulder in a language even I can understand, the right name for things not kept in heaven. So like it's the coyote is speaking in a way that the narrator can understand. Not literally, I think it's the sort of what the howl means and whatnot. But the right names for things not kept in heaven is a pretty hard line. It's a pretty amazing line, because what it's suggesting is that maybe the coyote is very in tune with nature and it's speaking a sort of primeval language in its howls. Now, what exactly it could be saying, again, I think that has to do with sort of sex, the reproduction element that the coyote is seeking to do. But it's kind of leaving off a little bit more dread, because what if this coyote comes back later? Anyway, those are my thoughts on Coyote Song. Pretty interesting poem. Certainly a lot worth thinking about. In terms of nature, but also maybe the parallels towards men and women, human males and females, I think that's what Marsha is sort of hinting at underneath the surface of this entire poem. But it could also just be nature that she's talking about. Maybe there's nothing too deep there. Let me know what your thoughts are about that in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you and have a discussion about this poem. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poet or this poem if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and coyote guarding travels. Farewell.